Section 2.7, we have evaluate and simplify expressions. Let's talk about vocabulary here. Evaluate means to find a value for. And then simplify, you've seen it before where we have a fraction and we find the common factors for both and we leave it in the lowest possible form. And the last thing is expressions. Our expressions are kind of what's on one side of an equal sign. Okay, so we have equations. Equations have equal signs, and then an expression, no equal sign. Okay, so for example, even though in this section we say evaluate expressions, this first one happens to have an equal sign. This is not an expression, this is an equation. But if you notice, here we don't have no equal sign, right? None here. We have an equal sign here, so this is a equation. And so this is n on this side, and then this is one expression, and this on the right side is another expression. So I want to make that distinction between what is an equation versus an expression. Let's try number 1. It says evaluate the following expression when x equals 34 and n equals 200. Let's round to 3 decimal places. So we have p hat, that little v, upside down v on the p is pronounced p hat, like something you wear on your head. And then we have x is the value 34 and n is the value 200. We're going to round to 3 decimal places. So let's use our calculator. We are not simplifying in the traditional fraction sense. So we have 34 divided by 200. In this case, there's no rounding necessary. It's just 0.17 or 17 hundredths. And so the reason we put this one first, even though it's not an expression, is that it's necessary for you to compute all the other things. In many of our statistics problems, we compute one thing first, and then we use it for the rest of the problem. So what is n for the next part B? 200 times p hat. And the value of p hat is 17 hundredths. I'm going to put in parentheses so you don't confuse that with this. And we're ready to multiply 200 times 0.17. That gives us 34. Notice this is an expression, n times p hat, because there is no equal sign. Last one. C. N is 200 times 1 minus p hat. So we have 1 minus 0.17. Order of operations tells us to do parentheses first. 1 minus 0.17 gives us 0.83 or 83 hundredths. And we are ready to multiply 200 times 0.83 or 83 hundredths. And that is 166. No need to round to 3 decimal places in this section. I hope that you are understanding the idea of substituting the values that are given to us or using a value that was previously found to evaluate or to find the value of an expression given to us. Let's try number 2. Evaluate the following expression when p hat equals 32 hundredths and n equals 400. Round to 3 decimal places. So in this case, we have some slightly more complicated operations. So we have p hat was given to us, 0.32. I'm going to substitute everything. 1 minus p hat and 400 for n. Notice I put the 0.32 in parentheses. It just seemed with a decimal I can get confused, so that's why I used my parentheses. If you don't like them, that's okay, but I really recommend parentheses all the time. Order of operations tells me to focus on one part of my fraction, so I'm going to take a look at my numerator first. Don't touch my denominator at all. And so parentheses is 1 minus 0.32. And I like to show all of my steps. If you are super handy with your calculator, go ahead and do it in one step. That's okay. So we have 0.32 times 0.68, and this will be square root of 0.2176. Let me remind you that you should not be rounding until the very end. So although this question says to round to 3 decimal places, and right now you see 4 places, you should not round here. The round to 3 decimal places applies to your answer. We are ready to divide. And so we have 0.2176 divided by 400. Now I have a -4 on the right. This is scientific notation, and this is telling me that this number is quite small, and my decimal is 4 places to the left. So you see the 5? That's 1. Let me show you like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my decimal place is all the way over here. So how many zeros is that? 1, 2, 3. You see those? Okay, that was real messy. Let's try again. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it's not the number of zeros, it's the number of decimal places. So we have 4 decimal places to the left. And that includes that 5. And we are ready to do our last step, which is the square root. Square root of 0.000544. Now this is approximately, because I'm about to chop off a bunch of numbers. It's asking me to round to 3 decimal places. So I'm only going to write 4. I don't care about anything else because it's going to get erased anyway. So I already chopped. That means it's already approximate, and I'm about to round. This is rounding to 3 decimal places. So I'd look here. This is where I'm looking. These are little eyes looking at that 3. This makes me stay at the same number, and then I drop everything else. So my value is approximately 0.023. Take a look at that order of operations. Like I mentioned, if you're good at doing everything in the calculator, go for it. I do not like putting everything into the calculator because I'm not sure if I'm correct once I do. It always makes me doubt myself. Number 3. Number 3 is very similar to number 2. And I want you to notice it's the same information. Take a look right here and right here. What do you have extra? You have these 2 things extra. So I'm going to guide you a little bit, but it's still going to be your responsibility to do these. First of all, this plus minus symbol indicates 2 things. So you're going to have p plus z times the square root, and you're going to have another completely different operation where you have p minus z times the square root. Now, focusing on the fact that now you're going to have 2 answers, I want to remind you that multiplication is first. Order of operations tells us to multiply. Do not add these 2 numbers. That is completely wrong. Please make sure you don't do that.